Okay, Shalom Aleichem everyone. I'm really sorry. It's been a couple of weeks. I was in America and then we got a little bit out of the flow, but back in the rhythm now. And looking forward to sharing with you Divrei Torah on a weekly basis. Today I want to dedicate the Dvar Torah to the Refuah Shlema Bimheira, really soon, quickly, to Yonasan Faivel ben Chana, our dear friend. Mitzvah Hashem, he should have a Refuah Shlema Bekarov. I wanted to share a little bit of a thought on Parshat Tetzaveh and on Purim together, on the Megillah, because you'll out of the ordinary emphasis on clothing. Parshat Tetzaveh is very obvious, the emphasis on clothing. It permeates every aspect of the Parsha, the Big Day Kahuna, the unique garments, vestments that were worn by the Kohen Gadol, the garments that were worn by the Kohen Hedyot. The whole Parsha is full of details about clothing. In fact, the Gemara indicates in Maseches Yuma that the Kedusha of the Kohen, his capacity to do avoda, was 100% dependent on Big Day Kahuna. When he had his clothing, when he had the Levisha, then Kuhunaso Alehem, then he had the Kahuna. Without the Levisha, without the Begadim, he was fundamentally pasul avoda. In other words, the Begadim are not merely a hechsher of avoda, but they are an indispensable part of what is necessary indeed to be a Kohen that is serving in the Beis HaMikdash. Why the primacy of clothing when it comes to the avoda, the Beis HaMikdash, of the Kohen Gadol in Mikdash? In addition, you find in Megillas Esther, again throughout the Megillah, an emphasis on clothing. Just a few examples, but first of all, we have the linkage. Chazal tell us in the beginning of the Megillah, when Achashverosh makes his grand party, and it was to show off the yoker of his malchus, the tiferes of his malchus. So the Gemara Maseches Megillah Daf Yud Beis indicates, yes, you know what the beauty of his malchus was? Because he took the kalim from the Beis HaMikdash, he took the Big Day Kahuna, and he was adorning them. So there's a linkage between this parsha that we read this week, Parshat Zohar, and Megillas Esther. But much more than that, when Haman wants to be rewarded for the good deeds that he does, so what does he seek? Achashverosh asks Haman, how should I reward someone who I want to give a benefit to? So Haman right away says, adorn him in Big Day Malchus. He should wear vestments of Melucha. And in fact, when Mordechai does get rewarded and the roles are flipped on Haman, so of course it's Haman that is parading Mordechai around the city of Shushan wearing Big Day Malchus. When Esther, in the beginning of Perek Hey of the Megillah, needs to go into Siach Hashverosh, so the pasuk emphasizes Vayihi bayom hashlishi vatilbash Esther Malchus. She's wearing her royal garments, and Chazal tell us, interesting, that what does it mean she was wearing Malchus? She was the queen, of course she was. What's the chidush? So she went in with a sense of Ruach HaKodesh, with Ruach HaKodesh at the very end of the Megillah, when Mordechai is elevated to Mishneh LaMelech. So the last psukim of the Megillah indicate that, once again, that Mordechai being elevated and now was wearing Levush Malchus. He was adorned in that sense of Levush Malchus, this emphasis on clothing. And when Mordechai wants to go ahead and daven to Hashem, there's a tzom, there's a fast, there's tefillah. So now all of a sudden he starts to wear Big Day sackcloth, a shift in garmentry. So interesting, the emphasis on clothing. One can even perhaps argue that the way we celebrate Purim is masks. We put on different types of clothing, unique kind of clothing. What is this emphasis on clothing? The beginning of the Megillah, when Vashti is paraded, Achashverosh wants to parade her naked without clothing. There seems to be something going on over here. So just a few quick thoughts, which I think is an element of both of these parashas. Parshas Tetzaveh, the emphasis on the uniform of Kohanim, the uniform of Kohen Gadol, and the necessity of avoda demands that uniform. You see, sometimes clothing serve as anonymizers. They cause the person to retreat behind the clothing. And I do believe that when it comes to avoda Beis HaMikdash, that is very, very purposeful. Is that it's not about this individual Kohen, this individual person, but the individual person is being anonymized through begadim, through his uniform, in order to fulfill the higher task of being the liaison, of being the bridge between Knesset Yisrael and Hashem, and between Hashem and Knesset Yisrael. And that's the unique role of the Kohen Gadol, to be a bridge. And to be that bridge, it's not about this Kohen or that Kohen, that's not the point. It's the, if you will, office of Kahuna, and the office of Kahuna is emphasized by the clothing which anonymize the individual personality of the Kohen. We do not want the Kohen to express individuality in his avoda. It is about the office of Kahuna Gedola, the office of Kohen. Just like you find in a police force, in an army, the uniform, in a certain sense, anonymize the individual. Now he represents something bigger. He represents the country. He represents the city. He represents the state. And that uniform stands for the state is behind me. The country is behind me. I am about this bigger concept. That's Parshat Tetzaveh. That's Kohen Gadol. That's Kohen. In the Megillah, perhaps another theme is going on. Haman wants Malchus. He wants Malchus. It's crystal clear. He wants to be the king. And therefore, when he's seeking a reward, he wants to wear the clothing of Malchus. There's only one problem. Haman is no king. He's far from being a king. He's trying to shortcut things with external lavush. I'll look like a king, so maybe I'll be treated like a king. He has no right. He doesn't deserve to be kingly. And therefore, it's a joke. It's a travesty. Mordechai does a tremendous good deed to save the life of the king. And therefore he's going to be paraded around the city wearing royal garments because he acted royally. He acted in a royal fashion, and therefore when he puts on those clothing are put on him, it is reflecting who he is on the inside. It's a sense of Tocho Kabaro. Esther, when she goes in to visit the king in the beginning of Parakeh, and she puts on big day Malchus, of course she does, she's the queen. Yeah, but the Chazal tell us much more than that, is that she was wearing Ruach HaKodesh, expressing that her royalty in Lavush was really expressing an inner royalty, an inner Gedula that she had. Achashverosh makes this great party, and how does he embellish his party in the beginning of the Megillah? He embellishes it with bringing the Klei HaMikdash, with bringing the royal garments of the Big Day Kohen into Shushan. That's a joke. He's not priestly. He's not princely. He's not real royalty. In fact, Chazal tell us he came from a very, very poor stock, and he was a buffoon on some level. The Megillah makes fun of him. But he's trying to put on a facade. The clothing is not reflecting who he is whatsoever. And perhaps, again, that's the message of the end of the Megillah, where Mordechai is paraded, it becomes Mishnah Melech, and once again wears royal garmentry, wears beautiful clothing, as opposed to when he's davening to Hashem, and now he wears sackcloth. Because indeed, in all of these instances of Mordechai and Esther, their clothing is reflecting their state, where they're holding. And yes, sometimes we wear princely garments, and that reflects who we are on the inside. Not the clothing should be a fake out, should be a facade, covering up, masking what we really are. That was Haman. That was Achashverosh. Esther and Mordechai, they also wear princely garments, and there's a place for princely garments to reflect that which is on the inside. I know the opportunity, I mentioned a number of times, to take around Rav Asher Weiss, and it's interesting, on Motzei Shabbos, once in a while I get to see him, and you see how he walks into a shir in his Shabbos royalty, with his shtreimel, with his long coat, and you feel there's a certain royalty being projected, and it's a royalty that is being projected from the inside. That's perhaps the message of clothing. Sometimes clothing are a uniform, and it's supposed to be a uniform because we want, it's not about me individually, it's about the bigger picture. And more often, when it comes to Yechidim, the clothing reflects both in a good way and a bad way. A big Talmid Chacham should not be wearing jeans and a t-shirt. A jeans and a t-shirt type of person should not be wearing three-piece suits and a hat and reflecting something other than what he is. Clothing can help us, bring us along, but ultimately they reflect our essence, who we are, what we're all about, and in that sense, we become authentic and real people, becoming Anoshim Shleimim in every sense of the word. Good Shabbos.